Welcome back, everybody, to the 10th and final installment of our Discover Canada Explainer series. Over our past 9 explainers, we've unpacked a ton of information, everything from Canada's vibrant history to its geography and how the government actually works. So today is the big one. This is our ultimate Canadian citizenship review. Whether you're feeling completely ready or maybe a little bit nervous, which is totally normal, by the way, just take a deep breath. We're going to gather all the tools you need to succeed on your citizenship test. We've distilled the absolute most important facts right here, so let's get you ready to pass with flying colors.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our agenda today is broken down into 4 main parts. First, history and symbols. Second, government, elections, and rights. Third, geography and the economy. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a practice quiz challenge.
All right, kicking things off with Part 1, History and National Symbols. Understanding Canada's past really is the very first step toward that citizenship ceremony.
So tracing Canada's historical timeline visually like this gives us some incredibly crucial memory anchors. It all starts with early exploration by John Cabot back in 1497, followed by Jacques Cartier claiming land for France in 1534. Those early explorations literally paved the way for permanent settlement, which led to Samuel de Champlain founding Quebec City in 1608. Fast forward a bit and we hit 1759. This is a huge pivotal moment where the British defeat the French at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, forever altering the trajectory of the continent. But listen, the absolute most important date to lock into your memory for the test is July 1st, 1867. That is Confederation, the birth of the Dominion of Canada.
Now, moving on to the foundations of the nation, I really want you to remember the rule of 3 when it comes to the indigenous peoples who lived here for thousands of years before Europeans arrived. Those 3 groups are the First Nations, the Inuit, and the Métis. Got it? First Nations, Inuit, Métis. You're also definitely going to need to know that Sir John A. Macdonald was Canada's very first Prime Minister. Oh, and another foundational piece of history is the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was completed in 1885. This wasn't just, a train track. It literally and figuratively connected the newly formed country from the East Coast all the way out to the West, making this vast dominion a cohesive reality.
So the crucial point is that you absolutely must associate these specific symbols and dates with Canada's identity for the exam. We're talking about the Canadian flag, the maple leaf, the beaver, the crown, the coat of arms, the Canadian horse, and of course, the national anthem, O Canada. And please, be sure to lock in these 2 specific dates. National Flag Day is on February 15th, and Canada Day, which celebrates Confederation, is on July 1st.
Moving right along to Part 2, Government, Elections, and Rights. Let's shift our focus from the history of the land to the rules and the rulers of the nation.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Canada's parliamentary democracy is structured. Think of it as 2 distinct groups of 3. First up, you have the 3 parts of Parliament: the King, the appointed Senate, and the elected House of Commons. Then you have the 3 levels of government that manage day-to-day life: federal, provincial or territorial, and municipal. Keeping these 2 completely distinct groups of 3 clear in your mind is just a fantastic way to organize Canada's political structure.
Now pay close attention here because this is a very common trick question on the citizenship test, differentiating between the head of state and the head of government. Because Canada is a constitutional monarchy, the head of state is King Charles III, who is represented here in Canada by the Governor-General. On the flip side, the head of government is the Prime Minister, who is the leader of the governing party in power. So let's repeat that one more time just to be sure. Head of state equals the king. Head of government equals the prime minister. Keep those 2 roles nicely separated in your mind.
Let's move to see how this builds into the actual legislative process. How do these branches actually create laws? Well, it's a linear 3-step process. Step 1, it begins as a bill. Step 2, that bill requires approval by Parliament, which, as we literally just learned, involves both the elected House of Commons and the appointed Senate. And finally, Step 3, once it's approved, it must receive royal assent to officially become the law of the land.
So, what does this all mean for you as a citizen? Well, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects some truly incredible rights: freedom of expression, freedom of religion, equality under the law, democratic rights, mobility, and legal rights. But, and this is a big but, a core Canadian value is that these important democratic freedoms always come with essential responsibilities. As a citizen, you have a duty to obey the law, vote in elections, serve on a jury if you're called, respect the rights of others, protect the environment, and step up to help your community. Rights and responsibilities, they always go hand in hand.
Okay,
let's transition over to Part 3, Geography and the Economy. We're going to look at the physical landmass and the economic engine of the second largest country in the world. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that for geography, you just need to lock two simple numbers in your brain, 10 and 3. That's it. Canada is made up of 10 provinces and 3 territories. Say it to yourself right now, 10 and 3.
Spanning an incredible 3 oceans, Canada's geography is honestly as vast as it is diverse. Let's do a rapid-fire run through the absolute must-know facts. The capital city is Ottawa. We have another rule of 3 to help your active recall here. Canada is bordered by the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic Oceans. The heartland features the 3 prairie provinces, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And rounding out the north are those 3 territories we just talked about, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut.
Shifting gears to the economy, Canada boasts a very strong, highly diverse economic engine. It's fueled by key industries like agriculture, forestry, mining, energy, manufacturing, and tech. You'll definitely want to remember that Canada's largest trading partner is the United States. And, it's really important to understand where your tax dollars go. They directly fund the essential services that citizens rely on every single day. Things like healthcare, education, roads, police and fire protection, and national defense.
And that brings us to Part 4, the Practice Quiz Challenge. Put away your notes, because it is time to see what you've learned.
Here we go. Practice question 1. Who are the 3 Indigenous groups in Canada? Think back to that rule of 3 we discussed earlier. Do you have the answer in your head? Okay, let's check. The answer is the First Nations, the Inuit, and the Métis. Fantastic job if you got that right. Remembering that foundational trio is absolutely essential for your test.
All right, let's move to practice question 2. When did Confederation take place? This is that crucial historical date question I told you to mark in your memory. I'm telling you, it is virtually a guaranteed test topic. Think back to that timeline we explored.
The answer is July 1, 1867. Excellent work. That is the exact day the Dominion of Canada was created, which is exactly why we celebrate Canada Day on July 1st. You are doing great.
Ready for a tricky one? Practice question 3. Who is Canada's head of state and who is the head of government? Remember that tricky comparison we looked at earlier? Mentally separate the monarch from the elected leader.
Here are the answers. The head of state is His Majesty King Charles III, and the head of government is the Prime Minister. If you successfully kept those two separate just now, you are in phenomenal shape for the actual exam.
All right, our final test. Practice question 4. Name 2 responsibilities of Canadian citizens. Think back to how rights connect to duties. This isn't just about passing a test, right? This is about the practical application of the citizenship you are about to step into.
So, how did you do? The correct answers include any of the following: obeying the law, voting in elections, serving on a jury if called, respecting the rights of others, helping your community, or protecting the environment. These are the very real, very important duties you will soon take on as a full citizen of this country.
Which brings us to a final question I want to leave you with today. As you step forward to take your oath, how will you use this knowledge to contribute to Canada's future? Becoming a Canadian citizen is so much more than passing a multiple-choice test. It's about respecting democratic values, embracing cultural diversity, and playing a truly positive part in your community. You have studied the history, the geography, and the rules of the land. Now, it's almost time to actually live them. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through our Discover Canada Explainer series. I wish you the absolute best of luck on your citizenship test and at your upcoming ceremony. Congratulations in advance, and welcome to Canada's future.